said that she absolutely outplayed Serena in the first set 6-2 before there was any controversy. We will show you the full highlight from the match, and we will hear from both players coming up. But here's the sequence of events. There's Mouratoglou busted, giving the coaching signals. He copped to it after the fact. That was the warning. Then Serena went up a break in the second, then got broken back, and that led to her smashing the racket. Here, that was the point penalty. That's what comes after a warning in the code sequence. Then, after complaining here and then complaining on the sit-down at 4-3, she went after Carlos Ramos, the chair umpire, for a good 90 seconds on the sit-down. She said a bunch of things that could have been interpreted a couple different ways, depending upon how you look at it as the chair umpire. But among the things she said, you're a thief, you're a liar, you're never going to chair one of my matches again, you owe me an apology. Somewhere in there, Ramos decided that that was worth the next in the sequence of code penalties, and that was a game. Let's listen to some of the exchanges between Serena and Carlos Ramos that led to the third docking.
You are the liar.
Code violation, verbal abuse, game penalty, Mrs. Williams.
Are you kidding me? Because I said you're a thief. Because you stole a point from me. But I'm not a cheater. But why? But I told you to apologize to me. This is out. Excuse me, I need the referee. I don't agree with that. But you know how many other men do things that are, I don't think they do much worse than that. This is not fair.
All right, so that was the sequence at 4-3 where she got the game penalty to 5-3, and then Osaka served it out from there. There are a lot of things to dissect. Where do you fall, John, on what she said verbally meriting or not meriting a verbal abuse penalty?
I say no. And I think that we talk about the rule book and we talk about the code, but a large part of officiating is discretion and latitude. You've got Serena Williams. She's already been warned twice. Liar, thief, not pleasant. Impugning character, fine. But given the context, you cannot make that a ruling at that point in a Grand Slam final. You just can't do it.
Agreed. And, you know, and Carlos Ramos is a great umpire, but he never tried to diffuse the situation with Serena. You know, in that whole tirade, easily he could have said, Serena, a couple more words and you're going to get a game here. At some point there, a lot of times our Jim Courier brought up you can give soft warnings for coaching as well to kind of warn the player. There's a lot of things he could have done along the way to maybe not get to the point where it was game and really change the whole narrative of this match.
It's interesting because it was at a stage in the match where she was being outplayed. We've seen things like this before, and we'll get into this a little bit more later, in 2009 and 2011, incidents where her going afoul of the code of conduct got her in trouble and ultimately ended some matches. But how is she playing, Paul? I mean, could she have come back in this match had these events not taken place, or are we throwing out the baby with the bathwater? She was going to get beat anyway.
Well, I mean, she was on the short end of who was playing better so far. And Naomi Osaka, what I was very impressed with is, number one, she played a terrific first set. Serena made a push in the second set, broke, but then she broke back. Yep. So when you see a young player that's able to handle a moment like that, when a great champion sticks their nose out in front after losing a first set and not bat an eye and get back into it and then start playing better tennis, to me, Osaka was playing better tennis. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, who knows? That's why we're here talking about it. But Naomi Osaka was playing the better tennis so far in the match.
I can't get past the lack of discretion. I mean, you have to understand the situation. You have to understand the player. You have to understand the circumstance. She already had gotten 2 infractions. You just cannot make that call. We saw earlier in this tournament, we saw Nick Kyrgios blatantly tanking. We saw an official get down out of the chair, say, I like you, you're good for tennis, no sanction whatsoever, and continue. The third time, not nice to call someone a liar, but given the circumstance, I just thought that was completely uncalled for.
I mean, also, how many times do coaches actually get warnings for coaching?
Yeah.
You very rarely see it. We've never really seen it from Serena before. Interesting in his interview post-match, I mean, Mouratoglou said, yes, I was coaching, I'll admit to it. And then he got a little tacky when he then accused all coaches and Sasha coaching every point and Uncle Tony for Nadal. He kind of went off the rails a bit there, but he definitely copped to it that it always happens. Now, the chair umpires almost never call it. So to call it in a Grand Slam final against, you know, a player that's never really had it before, it just seemed odd.
But if I can just play devil's advocate there and follow up on that point before we wind back to some of the earlier incidents. Okay, fine. So she got a warning, and whether it was right or wrong to call the warning, he did. But she lost the plot after that warning because she was taking it as a personal affront on her character, when in point of
It's
fact,
all on Patrick.
it was on Patrick.
Absolutely.
And did she not turn a mountain into a molehill there? And had it ended at the warning, that would have been the end
That's
of
another
it.
place where Ramos could have inserted himself and said, listen, Serena, this is not about you. This is all on your coach up there. You either tell him to be quiet, but that was my way of telling him to be quiet.
The misfortune of this sport,
and that's the
player
problem.
gets penalized.
Ramos didn't handle some of those conversations very well.
Paul, does Serena need to bear some of the responsibility for letting her emotions get the best of her when she could? Regardless of how you feel about whether Carlos Ramos did the right thing on the verbal abuse call, could Serena have done a better job in keeping herself together?
Absolutely, because it really wasn't an affront on her. But as Lindsay said, I would have thought, since Serena's been around long enough, she would realize that probably had nothing to do with her. It's her coach up there doing something, and that's where the mistake was made. Ramos wasn't able to jump in and go, Serena, just understand the rule. This isn't you doing something.
That's all he had to say.
This isn't you. This isn't an affront on your character. This is your coach, who I saw visibly give you signals. You might not even have seen them, and even if you didn't, doesn't matter. I saw him doing it. That's where the rule gets very tricky for the player who's on the court.
It also seemed unclear when she got the point penalty after smashing the racket whether or not she knew that because she had gotten the warning for coaching, that the next step in that sequence, even though it was a different violation, was to get the point penalty for racket abuse. We'll circle back to that in a minute. But let's go to 2009. There was certainly no debate over this being abusive behavior. Semifinal U.S. Open against Kim Clijsters, and this was the foot fault call that was made by the lineswoman that resulted in Serena, quite literally, guys, threatening her life.
Yeah, this was definitely verbal abuse on the linesman there. For Serena, it just happened to be at match point. And so the point penalty ended the match. I think Serena might have gotten defaulted from this match if it had been a different score, but that was match point, and Clijsters never had to play that final point.
And in case you don't remember this from 9 years ago, there was an F-bomb in there, and there was a threat that tennis ball in her hand was going to go down the lineswoman's throat.
Can I ask you guys, I mean, we also had an incident in the 2011 final. Look, in criminal law, prior bad acts matter. The fact that this is the third time in a late round match on that court at the U.S. Open that Serena has had an issue like that, do we think that impacted the way this played out? That's three times.
That's a question for Carlos Ramos. I don't know.
Yeah, but I would hope not. I would doubt it. I would call it extreme bad fortune. But also, if you look at the chronology of events and how they laid out, I can't imagine any other thing happening other than it was just a really bad string of events that happened at the worst possible time.
Just to clarify, for those who don't know how the code of conduct works, the current code goes warning, then point penalty, then game penalty, and then every infraction after that is game, game, game. There is no automatic default, and however, they can default you at any time with no warning if the offense is egregious.
Yeah, and I think what's also worth pointing out is that they can be different infractions. So when she smacked her racket, that had nothing to do with coaching, but infraction is where you have this incremental.
They're all under the same umbrella, and warning in one, next step is the point, no matter what under the code of conduct you violate.